watching Moonlight yesterday?
I have no clue.
So I'm literally scrolling through my cable channel, which is like not where you go to find movies, and Moonlight's on one of these channels, and I'm like, huh, Moonlight's on, and I'm like, should I like let this go or do I like close it or whatnot? And I'm like, fuck it, leave it on.
Did it just start?
It had just started like 5
Mhm.
minutes before, and I'm like, this is perfect. Get right into it, settle in, and I'm watching Moonlight, and Moonlight was already like a 5-star movie in my book. It was already like the best movie like I'd seen in like a minute, and I'm watching it, and I'm like, yeah, yeah, yeah. It still is. It still is. And like I think on my letterbox I put like a 5-star right away. The movie was not even halfway through,
Yeah.
and I'm like,
I
this is
even
like so
texted you.
good.
Bro
It's
was
so
like,
good.
I remember I texted you. I was like, so what are you doing at that current time? He's like, oh no, I'm watching Moonlight. I'm like, how come you just logged it? Like, did you rewatch it? He's like, no, I logged it before. I knew already. My opinion wasn't gonna change.
It's the first time I watched Moonlight, I saw it on a plane, and I was young. It was like the year after it came out. And at the time, I was really infatuated because it was the Oscars, and I didn't watch TV late. I wasn't like allowed to stay up late, but the idea that there was a blunder on national television had me like so like intrigued at the time. Like, how did they mess it up? It was like the talk of the town. Everybody was like, they made a big mistake, and they called La La Land's name. Moonlight had won. I remember it being like a big deal. Um, but I ended up watching it on a plane. I was really young. I was
It's 2017, so
so I was 15,
mhm.
and I was like watching it, and I liked it. Like I remember just seeing like this is really cinema. And think about it, 2017 at the time, my film intake revolved around whatever latest Marvel movie or
And whatever your
or
dad showed
James
you.
Bond. Yeah, and whatever my dad left on the TV, right? So um there wasn't much, but I remember watching Moonlight, and I was like, this is really something different, something I'd never seen before. I'd be willing to say Moonlight was the first like cinema fit like type of film that I watched. At
Mhm.
the time I'd seen bits and pieces of The Godfather or whatnot, but it was the first time I willingly sought out something that was out of the ordinary. Something that I was like, what is this? And I watched it, and I was like, wow. Like not mind blown, but the idea that this story can be told on a grand scale. It's a story that I've rewatched 5
Countless times.
times, perhaps since, like
Well,
several
I
times.
know the first time you've watched it, you showed me clips of it once you came back from that trip.
Yeah.
Like I remember vividly, you were like, "Oh, bro, I watched this shit." Look, and there was this scene with forgot the name of the actors because again, I've never seen this movie by the way. Although my guys tried his best to make me watch it, I'm the king
Yeah.
of
It's
saying
it's
yeah,
one on
yeah.
your watch list.
It is one of my watch lists. But there's this scene where like the dad is with his kid there.
It's not the dad. That's the problem. Like it's
Yeah,
not
but
the
that's my.
dad.
But you see my
It's
point there.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
there's a scene and I forgot the name of the actor.
Mahershala Ali.
Mahershala Ali.
Mahershala,
Okay,
yeah.
him, Ali. He's like there. I remember you telling me he's there for like 20 minutes, but it doesn't matter because his 20 minutes is like the most impactful 20 minutes I've ever seen in like movies. And I was just like standing here. He showed me the scene and was like, yeah, it's great. Without context, at 15 years old, I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. But looking
Yeah.
back, bro, it's truly special. I'm gonna let you talk
He
about it.
so like Mahershala won best supporting actor for a movie he's in for like 30 minutes of. Like he's in the movie's divided into three. If you've never seen Moonlight, essentially, I know you haven't. It's divided into 3 segments. Essentially, the poster of the man's face divided into 3: kid, adolescent, and adult. That is very much the reality of what Moonlight is. Uh, you have a movie divided into 3 parts. The first part is little. The second part is Chiron. The third part is black. Essentially, 3 different parts of the kid's life. He is essentially in the first part exclusively, and the movie spans about an hour. I think I want to say like an hour and 45 minutes. Yeah, an hour and 11 minutes. So no, an
11?
hour and 11 minutes. Sorry, an hour and 41 minutes. 111 minutes. It spans that length. So let's say you divide it easily into 30-minute blocks, count credits and whatever, right? So yeah, he's in the movie for the first half an hour. He had one best supporting actor, and I was like, Even looking back, I didn't think he won that until yesterday night when I was watching it and I was Googling. I'm like, what did this movie pick up after all? I knew it won Best Picture. It competed really hard with La La Land that year at the Academy, but I knew that Mahershala's performance felt very pivotal. You see, Mahershala Ali in this movie plays a drug dealer in the epitome of the crack epidemic in Liberty City, so the Miami area, and he's selling crack to everybody and anybody. But he sees this young boy, and he decides he's going to take it on upon himself to show the kid right from wrong, and show whatever, right? But the really interesting reality that this movie has is the fact that as this kid is learning from this man who is crooked, the kid doesn't realize that his mom is also becoming a drug addict, and she's buying her crack from Mahershala Ali's character. And so there comes this, and the mother is played by Naomi Harris, which is like one, if not her best performance to date. She lost Best Supporting Actress to Viola Davis that year, just to offer context. In Fences, she's so good in this movie, Naomi Harris. I remember watching Moonlight, and I'm like, surely she won. No, Mahershala won. Both are deserving, but nevertheless, because this movie doesn't really have a main character. It has a main character, but there is no main actor. There is no lead actor to the movie. So I just know Mahershala in this movie and Naomi Harris's character in that first 30 minutes, they have this argument scene about how, and everything is done with magnificent writing because it feels so realistic. There's nothing over the top. You see scenes in movies that involve, like, I think of Marriage Story, which is the best argument scene ever, right? Where they're screaming at each other, and but that's how people talk sometimes. But some people get into arguments that are just as casual and snarky and quick. When people don't know how to manage their emotions very well, or especially under the influence of something like crack, so there's like,
it's a hell of a drug.
Yeah, it's a hell of a drug. There's this one scene where like in the first 20 some odd minutes where Mahershala Ali's character catches Naomi Harris's character smoking crack, and he literally like starts yelling at her and berating her, and he's like, you have a son, what are you doing? He's yelling and screaming and whatnot, and all she answers is, well, are you gonna keep selling me? Are you gonna keep selling me the rocks, or no? And it feels, in that moment, I was like, first of all, that was the moment that locked me in, because I was 20 minutes in and it was close to my bedtime, so I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna stick around, but it made me feel like, you know what, let's keep this going and see what comes out of it, and I'm happy I did, because Moonlight is about that. It's about being everything you want to be, but still being tied down by a lifestyle that keeps you in behind closed doors. And in this situation particularly, we're talking about a young man growing up in a tough neighborhood, already dealing with the idea of racism and that inequality, on top of the fact that he's a gay man, or a gay little boy who goes into a gay teenager to be a gay man, who is taught to suppress, deflect, or ignore whatever his problem is, whatever he feels like his problem is. And you have a character like Mahershala Ali who's trying to steer him in the right direction, who's also doing completely wrong things on his own right. And then you have a mother who's absent, who literally tries to steal the money out of his pockets to put him in to buy more crack, to satisfy her own addiction. She's trying to steal money from her son to buy more crack. Anyway, this is, obviously we're talking about something that spans over a long course of time. And then we have the idea that a man who is suppressed throughout his entire childhood and adolescence, what does that grow up to be? Does that grow up to turn into somebody who's a free bird, or does that completely lock up and suppress themselves and put up hard walls? That's what Moonlight is. And Moonlight is just the best version of that story I think I've ever seen. There's nothing like exploring psychological hardship in terms of accepting who you are. Really. Um, Again, like I'm not sitting here being like I can totally relate because in 2008, no, like I'm not gonna
Hmm.
do that. You know, I cannot relate to any of the struggles that this per character goes through. But I will say, relatability is not always
Empathy does
sustainability.
empathy doesn't need to come from a relatable point of view. You
That's
know,
true. Yeah,
it's just is the fact that like you see someone live and become who they are based on what happened in their circumstances, and you sometimes you just simply can't help it and be like sad for them or happy for them depending on the situation. It's just, to me, what really interests me about this movie is how they tie the three acts as you mentioned them, because as much as we can like say, and I know you're gonna go off there, but
yeah.
like how do they transition from this trying to protect at all costs this golden boy of sorts that is trying to be made of in the first act to becoming who he is in the end? Like
It's
that is because like
they
you can't
really
have a picture winner, best picture winner off of one third of a movie. Like what do they
no.
do so great that the rest of the way seals the deal?
This is a movie where this is a this so Moonlight, when I was watching it last night, I came to the conclusion that it's a fairly simple movie. It is a three-part story, and everything that happens in between the parts is usually stuck to like two beats. There is this problem and this problem, and that's what Chiron is dealing with in this period. In the first part, he's dealing with young kids bullying him and his mother slowly turning into addiction. In the second in the second part, he's dealing with young kids, adolescents bullying him. So it's a new level. It's more violent. It's more hostile, and he's dealing with the fact that his mom is now a full blown crack addict, but he's also lost Juan, which is Mahershala Ali's character. He's not there to help him anymore. So it's Chiron standing on his own with his mom, who's a full blown addict, and he's still dealing with kids who are harassing and hurting him. Act three is Chiron is an adult now. He's suppressed everything about himself inside. He is tough. He is participating in illegal activity. He is strong, chin out, chest puff. He's ran away from his problems. He's moved from Florida to Georgia. Which is not far, but he's moved away essentially to get rid of avoid anything. He's put up a complete wall around himself. And where does that bring him essentially? Um, what the movie does well by tying it together is that you pick up in three different parts of the guy's life, and he's still dealing with the same problem. He's suppressing himself, and that is what, in my opinion, that's magnificent, because it's hard to make a 2 hour movie about the same problem so interesting. But when something is constantly de-escalating, it's hard to, you want, as much as you want to stop it, you can't. It's kind of how, they say time heals everything. Well, when you're born with something and you're told it's a scar and not a trait, well, how long do you wait before you realize it's not going to heal? I'm not trying to sound poetic. This is not an
Bro,
Instagram
but
caption, but
it's
I'm saying
no, but
that's
it's
the
still
reality of this kid in this movie. He is born loving who he loves. He is born feeling the way he feels, and he's going to go through his whole life trying to hide it. And Moonlight, like you said, that kind of touches on the empathy part of it, where you're like, he can't get ahead. You want him to win. He's not winning. He's bullied. He's beaten. And all he's taught how to do is, well, fight back. But he's not a fighter. He's confused. It's so touching. It's a touching movie. It really works well. And the only character who understands the kid is Mahershala Ali. And then eventually, when his character passes on, You don't. You realize that Chiron is all alone. Really, he's got no one who accepts him, and so that's the harsh reality of Moonlight. I think that it's a beautiful hidden reality. That's what this movie is, because you know it's how we see it more now than ever. You got LGBTQ stories of people who are like, I've been suppressing my, I've been in the closet for, and some people were born in a loving family and whatever, and other people have tougher situations. Well, this guy has a tough situation, and how does that reflect on him? I think it's an important story. I think it's one that ages well. It's one that says you might as well fall into who you are instead of running away from it,
Hmm.
because you're
And
not going to run away forever. And if you run away forever, you're not going to have anything left by the end of
mhm.
it. That's what the lesson of the movie really feels like. And especially that ending. Like, I was sitting on the couch and my brother walks by and he goes, "What are you watching?" I said, this is the third act of Moonlight." And he sits there and watches it with me. And the way that the movie ends is relatively abrupt. And he's like, "That's it." And I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Well, that kind of sucks. Not the movie, but it kind of sucks for the main
Everyone
character."
involved. Yeah.
Yeah. And you're like, "Yeah, but that's life. Like, that's the lesson. Sometimes it just sucks." And, I wanted to draw a comparison because it made me feel like I was watching The Iron Claw a little. And the Iron Claw's movie that came last year, and I think Moonlight is and the Iron Claw are not very comparable outside of this one element. It's the inevitable slippery slope feeling of like dread when you're watching both of them.
Hmm.
Um, they're very different artistically, cinematography. They're written very differently as well. Hell, they're not even set in the same time zone. But you're dealing with characters that you're taught to love, and they're being destroyed in front of you, and that's like hard. It's really hard to watch, but there's something where you rally around those characters more than ever before.
Hmm.
To me, Chiron from Moonlight is one of the best written characters I've ever seen in my life. What, like, because of the struggles he goes through, because of who he is, because if you're taught not to do something, there's a good chance you're not going to do it. And
And
that's
true beauty as well in the lack of theatrics when it comes to like tough moments and tough situation,
mm-hmm,
because it's so easy and it's so natural even for like movie makers to just go about dramatic scene in the most extravagant ways because it's what the art is made for.
mm-hmm,
It might not be always true to life, but at the end of the day, you're watching a movie and
mm-hmm,
it's about painting a picture that paints those emotions well. But for a movie that, as you said earlier, focuses so much on like the non-acceptance of who you are as an individual, seeing it repressed and just ending in the way that like you're just going to be riding the wave if you don't pave your way
yeah,
is just it's a beautiful message that again I like the link that you've made between the Iron Claw and that because they life is unavoidable and it's never going to be more unavoidable than during a crisis
yeah,
or in a time when you're deep down because you're at the mercy of everything.
mm-hmm. And that's the bitterness that Moonlight contains. That's the hardship that it has. The idea that as much as he's trying, Chiron is so afraid to get ahead because people are gonna hurt him. People hurt him. Like, it's not like people just ignore him or don't want to be friends with him. They beat him. Like, they hit him, they hurt him, they leave him in there in the hallway on the ground. They leave him, and it's just like you don't you don't feel like that should exist.
Mm-hmm.
But
And
that is the
it's
reality that is painted. Not It's not the reality that's painted. That is the reality that is captured. That is a
mm-hmm.
reality. And we're talking about, the movie talks about, subjects of not just um being homosexual or being African American, but it's the masculinity of it all as well. the masculine characters in the movie are one of them's a drug dealer, and the other ones are just like all tough, rigid,
Mm-hmm.
aggressive. Um, Chiron has no father figure. His mom is tough on him. She yells at him, and it's just
It's a silent achievement. It
yeah, but
really
it's
is
it's
what it is.
more
But
than
in
that.
a
It's
mm-hmm.
effective in by all accounts in messaging on every level. It's the best movie. It's a movie that I feel everybody must watch. Not
Yeah,
everybody is going to relate to it, but everybody will show. If you
bro.
cannot show empathy to Tyrone, you don't deserve
Mm-hmm.
to,
But
like
again, when I what I was going for with silent achievement is the idea that for the struggle that like society for even to this day like oppresses and tries to keep under wraps and just not talk about like the struggle that one might have. The fact that you're able to paint the picture of human struggle in a way in society and how we interact with each other, that is the silent achievement that I'm meaning to say when I talk about this movie, even though I haven't seen it. But from what you're saying, it's just how how more accurate could you paint a situation where everything must be kept under the rug than to keep it under the rug and see how it unfolds and to make the viewer feel the uncomfortableness and the pain that comes along with it, the unsatisfaction of you're gonna waste your life not being who you are. It's just it's a, as crazy as it sounds, a perfect
just
contrast
I
to
don't want to
yeah.
interrupt you, but you are going to waste your life being the person, not being the person that you are, and you're going to waste your life trying to convince yourself you're not the person that you are. That's a part of this movie too.
Mm-hmm.
For a long time, Chiron, I can't say the words that are said in this movie on account of the fact that I want to have a filmmaking career, but there's a scene where Chiron, as a kid, he's like 9 or 10, he's sitting beside Juan, who is Marshall Ali's character, and he looks at him and he goes, "What's a F word slur?" Right, talking about a slur in. And he says that's a word that is used to make gay people feel bad. And Chiron goes, "Well, am I one of them?" And Juan says, "No, you're not one of them." He says, "You could be gay, but don't let anybody ever call you that ever." And that's like that at the time, like when I'm watching this movie, when you're watching it, that is the key connection that you realize Chiron has. Meaning, if Chiron were to ever come into himself, it would be with the help of a character like Juan, someone who appreciates him and loves him for who he is, despite all the wrongdoing and lack of contributing he's doing to the greater good of the community. But it's easy to me, and that's a great picture as well of if a child has a leader in front of them, they feel invincible. My father told me I could be like this. I'm going to be like this. My father will defend me. And Juan, when Juan's character passes along and Chiron is left alone, then there's nothing for him to back himself on. His mom laughs at him for the way he walks. For uh, she steals his money. Like I said that earlier, she yells at him. She berates him. "Don't look at me. You waste my time." She gets mad at him for coming home while she's smoking crack. Like that's what we're like. That's the character we're dealing. So it's just that is that level of emptiness and the void that Chiron has in his life that is so well captured. The effects of toxic masculinity, the effects of drugs in a community, the effects of suppressing the person that you are all doubled when you have no support system. And what if that support system betrays you? That happens in the second act, where Chiron meets somebody that he feels like is sharing that same type of life, and there's events that happen with the character named Kevin, and then Kevin's a massive part of the third act too. It's just really a movie that is not mind blowing for technical achievement, although it's beautiful in every way. It's a movie that just, if you don't feel it in your heart, there's something wrong with your heart. Like that's how I feel about it. And
It's
and
it's like the character arc. I was looking for a word specifically, and the word I was looking for was alienation. And I know how you would feel about going about that like angle when it comes to the main character, but how you become alienated with yourself. Like I don't know if you follow what I mean
yeah,
with
you
that.
well, you alienate yourself.
Mm-hmm. Which is
That's actually pretty interesting. Like alienating yourself from society is one thing. You're alienating yourself from um your the thing that's in the thing that works so well in Moonlight too is that the only person who does the alienation is so Chiron is alienated by his classmates, by everybody around him. They see how he walks, they see how he talks, they go, hey, that, they say mean things about him and they throw him to the side. But what happens when you are in a constant like pressure cooker that you start alienating that person, that part of you as well? Like the double, the divide, the interior being torn apart is what that movie is. And I'm gonna give credit to that technical team. Cutting from Act 2 to Act 3, just to offer like an idea, Act 2 ends with Chiron being taken away in a cop car after breaking a chair over the bully's back. He gets mad, he loses his shit, he grabs a wooden chair and he smashes it over the bully's back. The police arrest him and take him to the station. Cut. Chiron, part 3 shark. Chiron is now wearing a black tight do-rag. He's got golden grills in, big chains. He's got a gun on his hand, and he's driving in a lowrider with a stack of cash on his passenger side. That is the person that came from the childhood. And that third act is like a micro movie within itself, because you quickly understand that Chiron is who he is now because he never got to be who he wanted to be, and then you start chiseling at him, and then Kevin, a different character from the movie, re-enters the picture, kind of exposes him. But it's that shot. There's this shot. I can't remember the name of the song, but the beat kicks in, and it's a cut right to it's the mouth, his mouth in his car. Picture the angle coming from the rearview mirror, coming right on his mouth, and it pans out wide, and it reveals the chain, the gun, the look, the demeanor, the cold. And he picks up his friend. I don't know who the guy is, but he picks up a guy he's working with, and his first question to him is, "Where are the girls? Where are we going? Where are the?" Chiron doesn't like girls, but it's like it's the character arc goes full in this movie, and at the end, by the time the credits start to roll, you can only hope that it's resolved internally. But Barry Jenkins, director, writer of the movie, leaves his movie with the idea that although Chiron might know, he'll never change. And it's sad. Like, it's really sad. Like, that's, and even sadder is the final cut of this movie, which is on all the promo pieces. It's the little kid with the moonlight by the beach. That's the last shot of the movie, because it's a flash. It's like a mental. Essentially, the movie ends with Chiron, admitting to. Like, anyway, I don't really have to. It's not important, but Chiron kind of comes to terms with the fact that he is the way he is, and he's not interested in being anyway else. To the only person he feels like he could trust to say that. And then flash back to the beach, where it's like this kid has been through all this to get to a point where he can feel like he can trust somebody. Doesn't mean it's going to go his way, probably not, but it's a moment.
He managed to get there.
Yeah, it's like a moment of peace. That's how I interpret it anyway. I know that it might not be accurate, but it's a moment of peace that you don't get away from, that you wish you could soak in for that character.
And is there a more peaceful way to be than just an acceptance and full of who you are?
Yeah, well, kind of, because what is acceptance versus what is what is acceptance, internal acceptance, and what is global acceptance. Like if I accept who I am and I go outside and picture, this is a very interesting comp. Picture RuPaul or Chapel Roan, who deals with issues every day but accepts who they are and hits the streets and fuck you to whoever doesn't like me and this is who I am. That's global acceptance. Even if you don't like me, you don't watch me. But Chiron might think in his head, this is where I'm supposed to be, but he doesn't look. You don't leave his character with the feeling that he's going to go outside and start, exploring his life the way he wants or the way he wish he could. That's kind of how it is. It's the harsh reality where the movie fight is a fight for internal struggle and not, we're not worried about what the world thinks of you. You're worried about what you think of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And the behavior.
And it's a beautiful nuance too when you consider it from that lens, because it's easy to for us to generalize it as, okay, you're willing to move on and become who you truly want to be. Well, do just that. Go out there, be extravagant, be yourself. When in reality, who's to say that it is truly who you are? That person that just goes out. It's just, again, which links back to the idea of, is the acceptance of who you are the true peace in the end? Because regardless of what you do afterwards, if you're at peace with who you are and the way you see yourself, your outlook on life and the way people look in might not really matter as much as you might think in your youth and the way you're brought up. And when you're alienated, as we mentioned earlier, to the point where your only constituent of your personality is external factor, recentering it around yourself must be crazy euphorical. It must really be a life turning moment.
Yes, and that's and it sucks because this movie doesn't get there.
Mm-hmm. This
movie doesn't show you that. It shows you that the battle is hard enough, and that's a story. That's beautiful pen by Barry Jenkins. That's beautiful directing, and it's kudos to the technical team. This editing is so. It's one of the movies where I noticed how good the edit is. Like when edits hit you, like a drum kick at a concert, is it a kick?
Yeah.
When they hit you like that, you're watching something a real, a tight, I don't know, I don't know, I can't even come up with the words to say it. When
an edit is the right way.
The edit is tight, but I'm saying when an edit can hit you at the level that it does in this movie, you know that you're dealing with something that is truly, truly impressive. I'm trying to see if it won for best editing, but I don't think it did.
And it's the gel factor too that makes it all together, because it's every single punch that you get is the weight that it has is literally everything that you saw prior to that moment just hitting you, and it piles up and it piles up and it piles up.
And the movie has a lot of there's a sequence where I mentioned it earlier where Chiron ends up in the back of a cop car, and the way that the sequence happens is that he gets beat up by a bully. Cut. He's getting lectured by the principal, where he goes through some different emotions, and you can see by the end of that he ends up choosing he's going to end up choosing violence. He's going to end up choosing that he's not going to win his way. He's going to have to. So cut. He's soaking his face in water, which is a massive iconic shot from that movie. The bloody nose in the sink in the bathroom, and cut again. High speed scene. It's the pacing that is cut, and it's oh, whoa. It's that rhythm that Barry Jenkins and that editorial team found, and they just they
do you
snap.
feel there's weight in the idea that the movie purposefully chooses to skip over moments in Chiron's life? Is that his name?
Chiron. Yeah,
Chiron's life, because it's not him really. You know what I'm saying? How the way they skip from Act 2 to Act 3, the fact that he decided to let go who he perhaps should have been and become who society pictures him as being. the fact that they cut to the chase and get in the future kind of underlines that this moment is not important, not only for the audience, but for his life as well, because that shouldn't have been his life.
I don't
true,
think
because true good editing to me is able to tie in a narrative intent with that, and the way you describe it, it's too
I,
there to like.
what I meant by the editing is more so the control it has of every sequence, like that just technically, like just
Mhm.
the way that it makes the movie flow, it flows well. Talking about the story structure and the way that's pieced together, it skips large gaps in Chiron's life because you kind of come to the conclusion that Chiron's never going to change. Chiron is going to be warped into this person that he is. And so they'd rather just show you where he's at instead of showing you him getting there. Because it doesn't matter. Because what this movie does well is that it shows you who he's chasing. By Act 3, you realize he's chasing Juan. He's Juan now. He looks like Mahershala Ali's character. He's a gangster. He's tough, and he hasn't lost his moral compass because Mahershala Ali's character always had one. But what he has to lose, he had to sacrifice his moral compass because he's insecure. So it's more aggressive. He's more tough. But that is the men he grew up around in that area. So he had no he doesn't feel like he has a choice to be this way, and so. What I think the movie does a good job at is in Act 1, you understand why he is in Act 3. Because you saw the characters do it in Act 1 and Act 2. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it feels like it really feels like the endless cycle.
The self-fulfilling prophecy of
when
sort.
somebody like Chiron will die, the next kid who comes along is going to go through the same problem.
Mm-hmm. And I love the idea, the like sub narrative of, because it's the only guy that he could fall back upon in his life, that he chooses to be the man that he is in the future.
I don't necessarily think it's like a conscious choice.
I think
it's like a model choice. Like it's
I know, but it's a conscious choice like I think it is, from like the writer's perspective. The idea that who was there for you once he's not there for you, you're gonna try to become that, not because you want to, but because it's safety, it's home in a way. And it's just as much as it is like toxic, as much as it is not appropriate, illegal, all that you want. Humans want comfort above everything,
mm-hmm.
and if that is the source of your comfort in a way, I think it's a beautiful way of saying he couldn't get it anywhere else, and it ended up being here that he's there like right now.
Yeah, he only felt comfortable when walls up. Don't let anybody get close to you. Don't let anybody be friends. Like, like very much like that. Like it's just like I said, the movie captures a sad reality and it executes it technically, directorially. It's written beautifully. It's acted beautifully. There's nothing wrong with this movie. It's a near perfect. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's not like a guilty pleasure personal favorite. It's literally just a movie that, if I meet somebody and they're like, I'm looking for a great movie to watch, and they're like, have you ever seen Moonlight? Because, and I understand there's like a cliche, people think that, it won Best Picture. I want something that's like more indie, more underground. And I'm like, dude, it literally won Best Picture. And somebody made a mistake. Like, I don't know how you can find the movie. Like, how fitting for a movie like Moonlight. Like, it slides right in. Like, it just slides right into that. And to me, like, I'd make the claim it's one of the most important Best Picture winners we've ever had. For kids, for adults, for that community specifically, for the communities it messages about. Because it's not just the LGBTQ community, it's the African American community, the toxic masculinity, all that stuff. And we live in an era where that's like cool now. I feel like that's a reality. Like being a toxic
it's a movie
male.
for who.
Sorry.
It's a movie for whoever has ever been oppressed in his life. like
Kind.
regardless of the
I don't.
position. I know
Yeah.
they paint it in a specific way, but the empathy part of the narrative is going to ring with every single individual that has ever felt oppressed in his life, because the same wall that the main character is facing in this movie is all that we've all faced at one point in our life.
Yeah.
Maybe not to
Yeah.
the same degree, maybe not because of the same situations, but it's a human condition to face that kind of adversity.
The word, like, using oppression is interesting. I don't think it's necessarily like oppression, but to me it's more so like, um you ever have a hard time with yourself? Like, you ever second guess who you are and what you're capable of to an extent where you don't want to do it anymore? Where you're like, I think it might be easier if I just leave myself alone. That's what this is. And it's a study of the environment that this kid is in, but it's more so a study of the individual that this kid wants to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really phenomenal. Like I think it's amazing. You flash back to the year it came out, and it was neck and neck with La La Land, which is, I know, ironically, your favorite movie of all time. I
Maybe not
think,
of all time, but
but
it's
it's like
up
up
there.
there.
It's up there.
It's
It's
up there.
really good. But again, the reason I also wanted to go about this conversation is because of that. Like, I never took the time to watch Moonlight, and I wanted the bigger picture. And
Mhm.
if there's one thing that La La Land doesn't have, for all the good thing that it has, that this movie has, from what you're telling me and from what I've understood, it's the, how can I say this in a way that is not going to offend myself? There's levels to like relatability. There's levels to like living your life, but in a way, I'm the kind of guy that if I was to have those two movies, there's gonna be one of them that I know if I ever meet the main character, I want to just go and give him the biggest hug of all time and try to help them because I've empathized with them,
Yeah.
and I've they're so human that like they deserve to be loved, and
Mhm.
this movie is not La La Land.
Yeah. I wanna just build off what you're saying. Moonlight stands out because it's a smaller, more personal story. For all the things that La La Land is, La La Land is, it's tough. They're not comparable.
Mm-hmm.
La La Land is not close to what Moonlight is, and Moonlight's not close to what La La Land is. They're two beautiful movies that exist synonymously. La La Land is a movie about people knowing who they are, trying to fight through the world that doesn't seem like it's fair, and it's artistry. It's, what are you willing to sacrifice? And Moonlight is about one person, one kid. Um, I just remember when they were competing, La La Land would win technically, and Ryan Gosling and Emma Stone were there a lot, and Moonlight had its push in its own way. It had the underground team. It was the adapted screenplay. It was the best supporting actor with Mahershala.
But
And then
again,
eventually Best Picture was crazy
mm-hmm. But
because La La
again, it's
Land
just
was like right there. But I don't. La La Land
I'm
was
gonna
like a
have to
shoe in.
watch Moonlight, because the truth is, just like the way I was able to like envision it in my mind through this conversation, there's a beauty in painting the most beautiful scenery you can, but I don't think there's anything more beautiful than life itself. And like
That's the big difference.
that's like, I
That
think.
is the same. Sorry, I don't want to
Go ahead.
interrupt
No, no,
you.
it's okay.
That is the same argument that could be made about this year's Academy
Mm-hmm.
Awards, where Honora beats out a Dune Part Two and a Brutalist and a Emilia Perez, for example. You can paint a picture and tell a story about people and the way that the world works, but is there truly anything better than somebody who's just trying to live life? Somebody who isn't really sure of who they are in the environment that maybe isn't necessarily nice to them. In the case of Honora, she's a girl who gets thrown into an environment that doesn't accept her. And in the case of Moonlight, there's a kid who is born into an environment that doesn't accept him. And that's like life. That's life for these people. That's a slice of life from somebody who your average, not your average person, that most people don't relate to. I was born into a happy home with people who love me, and I was born into a community that I was born into a neighborhood where I can walk out of my house in a dress and blue hair, and no one would tell me anything. As were you. This kid can't even walk. He wears a t-shirt and jeans and walks out and gets punched because he's walking weird. Like there's levels. Like and that's the beauty. That's a slice of life that you don't see. You don't see, and you don't see that. You can get into the budgeting and the technically small scale of the movie and why that is cool to see on the Academy level as well. But it's just like these movies are there because they deserve to be there, not because they're the year's best shoe-in. Or they're not like the token. It's not token. They deserve to be there. And Moonlight is Moonlight is the most important Best Picture winner we've had in a long time. And I don't mean importance in the sense that it's better. I mean importance in the sense that if there's ever a slice of life that you want to watch to understand, to not be a dickhead every day, maybe just watch this. Maybe be nice to somebody you see outside. Maybe understand that when people wake up in the morning, they don't know, their home might not be as pretty as yours. And their people inside might not love them the way you do, if they have anybody inside. And the world might not accept them the way that you feel accepted every day. So, don't be a fucking dickhead. Like that's just how I feel. That's what the movie made me feel. I was like watching it and I'm like, people are not nice. We don't live in a kind world. We live in a world where people are designed to hurt each other. Like people are made to hurt each other. And I'm not going to act like filmmakers make movies and then sit on a moral high horse and say, look what I made. Look how nice I am to people. No, it's nothing to do with that. To me, it's more so like some things are made to be ingested and used as entertainment, and other things are made and can be used to watch and cherish for a longer time.
This sometimes things are made because they need to be made. Mm-hmm. The urge to just create in and of itself is enough to justify everything. And there's been so many nominees through the years that have been like falling into that category. But it's when you melt the three together that you get a Best Picture.
Yeah.
That is the biggest picture. Like, pun not intended there.
No, I know, but I see what you mean.
It is truly what it is. You got to be able to understand that without those three characteristics put together, you're not going to be enough. And if you go off of that basis, you get pretty much understand why every single year movies that have won.
It's yeah. Are you able to mix story, technicality, and scale?
And appeal.
Appeal. That's what I mean when I say scale. Like, are you hitting on any level with anybody? That's a factor, massive factor. It's interesting because this, Moonlight's based off a play, which I didn't realize that until just now. And it's a play, and it was ironically Barry Jenkins made his debut film in 2008, and he made a bunch of screenplays afterwards, and nothing was going into production, and he met a producer, and the producer urged him to make a second film. He said, you got to make something, your first movie, whatever. So he sat around, and I'm reading this just strictly off just research. He's reading. He sat down with the producer and spoke and said, "What are we going to do?" And I'd like to make a low budget, cinematic but personal film, something tight, something low key, And Jenkins was at the I don't even know how to pronounce this word, Borscht Corporation, which is a nonprofit, a nonprofit and arts collective in Miami, and they introduced them to Terrell Alvin McCraney's script, his play, which is in Moonlight, Black Boys Look Blue. That's the name of the script, and Jenkins read it, loved it. He spoke with McCraney, and he wrote the first draft of the film in Brussels. He went to Brussels for a month, wrote the first draft of the film entirely, came back with a draft. And that's like, what do you want more than that? And he took his script, he took the play, he broke it down, he compared his life to McCraney's life. Look, the play originally contained 3 parts. Those ran simultaneously, so the audience would experience a day in the life of Little, Chiron, and Black. Jenkins broke that up. He split it into 3 different parts. Little, Chiron, and Black are the same person. They're just different names. And so essentially the result of the screenplay is something that reflected Jenkins' upbringing as well as McCraney's. One is based on the father of McCraney's half-brother, who was the childhood defender of McCraney. Paula was the depiction of Jenkins and McCraney's mothers, who were both drug addicts. McCraney and Jenkins grew up in Miami Liberty City, which was the primary location of the film. Essentially, what I'm trying to get at is Jenkins made this movie because he looked for something to make. And he came across something great. Something that he felt like he could relate to, make, do something with. And he took off from there. He had to look for financing for this movie. He wrote it and was like, who's going to pay for it, And he ended up working with Plan B Entertainment. They produced it, and then A24 did the rest. Produced, distributed. It was A24's first Oscar win. A24, which is the juggernaut we know it to be today, is like, that's really the basis of what filmmaking is, right? Like, you told the story that people need to hear. You told a story that people can draw something from. What's the arc? I think of Russell Brand in the movie Bedtime Stories with Adam Sandler, where he tells them a story. You've seen this movie, right? Yes. Adam Sandler, and he's like, and then the guy wins $1 million. Good night. And then Russell Brand's like, there's no arc. Mm-hmm. Where's the arc? And that's what storytelling is. How do you get a character from point A to point B? Either in here or out fashion. Here.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Moonlight's beautiful. I love it. I really do. It's
you've shown
crazy.
I've
shown my. Sure. I know I have over this past
and it's,
hour.
Yeah,
and
so. It's not to sound like dismissive, but like it's beautiful to be able to just look at something and dissect it in a way that really just makes you enjoy it even more than you could have just by watching it.
Mm-hmm.
And like it makes the experience of watching and rewatching and thinking about it even more than what it could have been.
Absolutely.
It's beautiful.
It is. I love that. I love it with all my heart. Really do. It's no joke. It's no joke. I know it's obvious, but I'm like, it's no joke. It's
truly
it's
cool.
Really up there. Like, it's up there. It's a banger, and I urge people to watch it. I'd love to sit down with Barry Jenkins and McCraney themselves, because I want to know, as much as I could sit here and interpret and like understand the movie from my own lens. I am a white guy, if you couldn't tell. I don't live hardship like the way that this character does, the way that Jenkins and McCraney did. I'd love to understand, have a better idea from their first take. What does it take for 2 men who come from an environment where they're told no and turn every no's into yeses? They make although problems are relative, movies like these make my problems feel small. Like, you're like, oh shit, yeah, okay. And all I'm worried about is what the docket is for this next pod. Like, like, this kid can't even live. Like, like, I live. This kid can't live. Like, that's why it's important, man. I just feel like I said earlier, you got to watch this. People have to watch this movie. You got to watch this movie.
Of course.
Get a better idea of what's going on.
It jumped a few ladders.
It should. It really should. It should be up there. It's iconic. It's iconic. Yeah. And I said it again. I'll say it a third time saying it. It is like the most important.
Did you actually? I know for a while you had it in your top 4 in Letterboxd. Is that still the case?
it's not there. I treat the top 4 in Letterboxd like the movies that people can like talk to me for. Granted, I should put it there because that's what I'm feeling like right
no
now.
offense, it should be. It really should be.
You
Because if
can't
there's
make me
one
take
movie that
that
had,
Cha Cha Real Smooth.
bro, if there's one
I'm kidding.
movie that has been a staple of you as an individual in your like parkour in cinema, it's probably this.
That's fair. I'd
Like,
say that's fair.
if I had to like say or just think about it, it's that. Nothing else.
I'm
really.
gonna take down Rocky. I'm gonna throw in Moonlight. I think that's fair.
It is, and nothing to say like that. Like it's a moving thing, you know. It's just in
Well, I
reality.
don't necessarily think that like a 4 favorites on Letterboxd is something
Oh,
that's
it's
like
very
carries much
arbitrary.
significance.
It's
But
it's very arbitrary,
it's
but it's
interesting the idea that you know the
because
idea
for
that
as much as you
4
could say
favorites exist.
good things about Rocky,
Well, Rocky's just
I
a
hate.
staple of my childhood. But if I wanted to talk
Mm-hmm.
about myself if I wanted to talk about myself as a filmmaker, as somebody who enjoys art, Moonlight is up there.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Completely.
Moonlight on every level. I don't have to repeat what I've already said. It's just
Mm-hmm.
gorgeous. Yeah, I don't have anything else on Moonlight.
It's a beautiful thing, man.
Yeah, it is. It is.
I'm always happy to have you blabbing.
I'm blabbing about Moonlight,
I'm
but
always happy.
but it's no, I like it. I really like it. If you've managed as a listener to stick through 56 minutes of me discussing the intricacies of Moonlight, and you don't feel like watching it yet, I'm sorry. If you do feel like watching it yet, watch it, and then I'd say come back and listen to this again because I'm
Or
curious to see if my opinion floats on an
and
island or if
I'd
it's
be
like
more so
make any sense.
curious in hearing their thoughts.
I'd
If
love to hear what
Mhm.
people have to say about Moonlight. I think we're gonna do I'm hoping to reach a level where I can do a live stream and just blab about Moonlight live stream.
But again,
It
a panel would be more interesting because the
would be.
chaos,
It would
the
be.
chaos that comes from it is, it's hard. I love back in the day, like way back when you used to be able to send letters to people. You had like
Like a
it's,
PO
like,
box with
not
actual
a PO
letters.
box, like actual letters. Like you write to someone, it takes a week to get there.
Yeah.
Then there's another week, and you get an answer.
Mhm.
It's the idea that like you have time to sit with your thoughts and just think and come up with something that isn't instantaneous. That we've lost. We've truly
I'd
lost
agree,
the idea of
especially in communication
Mm-hmm.
in general. Yeah,
So like, it's a beautiful thing, and a comment section should be that.
I wish it
shouldn't be-
was. Most people
Yeah, I
just
wish
write
it was too.
garbage in there.
Mhm. First,
First, yeah,
beauty.
I'm urging everybody to watch Moonlight ASAP, and then think about where it stands in terms of how you interpret films. I know some people won't appreciate it on account of the fact that they're not like a cinephile, like if we're being realistic. Some people who like to watch action movies, strictly blockbusters, might not think Moonlight's enjoyable. It is slower. But I urge people, no matter what they enjoy, give it a shot. It's worth the shot.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. I'll leave it at that.
Again, it's worth the shot, and if it doesn't do it for you, it's not the fault of the movie, and it's not your fault either. It's just
Pick
it's a
something
result
else.
of who you are.
Yeah, it's like just pick something else. It's okay.
Mhm.
Anyway, that pretty much brings me to the end of my thoughts. So I'm done on this.
Beautiful.
All right.
Man managed to convince me to actually give a shot to Moonlight to see if it actually deserved rescue.
It fucking
Which
did.
probably
It did.
I
Of course
know
it
it
did.
does. I know